Welcome to our new interview series, V-Spot Perspectives, where we uncover the secrets of the digital world together with industry leaders. Brought to you by V-Spot, your go-to destination for all things blockchain and cybersecurity. Join us as we dive deep into the minds of industry leaders, innovators, and experts. We bring you exclusive perspectives, cutting-edge insights, and actionable advice to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of cybersecurity and blockchain technology. And now, without further ado, let's meet today's guest, a true titan in the field of cybersecurity, Marcello Bellini, right from Switzerland.
Welcome to Learn with WeSport, your exclusive source for insights from industry leaders. Today, we're diving into the intricate world of cybersecurity, specifically within the insurance sector. Joining us is Marcello Bellini, the esteemed information security manager at Baloise, Switzerland. With nearly a decade devoted to safeguarding digital frontiers and an impressive 20-year career in cybersecurity, Mr. Bellini is here to share his wealth of knowledge in navigating the ever-evolving cyber landscape. Welcome, Mr. Bellini, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I suggest starting from the very beginning and reflect a bit on your career, which is truly impressive. And I'm sure our viewers would love to hear about how it all began. Could you please take us back on your professional journey and share with us the moment when you actually decided to pursue a career in cybersecurity?
Yes, well, I started more than 20 years ago in IT. And since the beginning, security was an important aspect of my work and my interests. I started at a research institute in the IT department, and we were responsible for the whole IT services. As the researchers handled critical information and data for their research, it was also part of my job to keep that data secure. During that time, we had two research groups covering the topic of computer crimes. The term cybersecurity or cybercrime was not used then. One group was covering the legal aspects, that is what is allowed in the different jurisdictions around the world and where are gaps. For example, the hacker is located in Russia, the infrastructure is located in Germany used for that attack, and the target of the attack is in Switzerland. How can that be prosecuted and which jurisdiction applies? Mm-hmm. The second research group was looking more from a criminological point of view, meaning who are the victims, who are the offenders, and how do you become one of either group. My job was there also to explain the technical aspects and the techniques used by the attackers, and discussing, for example, if accessing a web application without password is already hacking or not. And after that time at the research institute, I was moving into the private industry, doing information security and internal audit. And since 10 years, I'm working for an insurance company, being responsible for information security and IT compliance. Mm-hmm. So it was more a coincidence that I started in cybersecurity, and that I'm still doing it with a shift more from a technical perspective, more into the direction of an advisor and governance role.
Mm-hmm. Though a great coincidence, I believe. And now reflecting on your extensive career, what has been your favorite aspect of working in cybersecurity?
Well, cybersecurity is constantly evolving, and it combines various aspects. It deals with both technical and non-technical aspects, and that interact and influence each other's, be it legal, psychology, or even new technical developments such as artificial intelligence or quantum computing.
Mm-hmm. So that we'll touch upon a bit later as well. And now let's focus on another point. As we know, you are involved in educational initiatives, such as being a speaker, invited speaker, providing insights on cybersecurity awareness for various organizations, and at events such as those for Arbeitgeberverband Basel. Could you please tell more about your engagement?
Well, I have given lectures at the university and conference from time to time, also over my whole career. Mm-hmm. And always for different audiences, which means that you have also to adapt the content to the target audience. In front of an IT audience, for example, it can go more into technical details, whereas with other groups, for example, you can explain the non-technical contexts and how they influence each other in other. I'm currently working as a lecturer for information security and data protection for a study course at the FHNW in the field of finance. So the course is digital banking and finance. Mm-hmm. And in this lecture, the focus is more on the context of effects and developments of cybercrime than on the technical details.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at your audiences, different guests, being a lecturer and still a professional, do you perceive a general trend of increasing curiosity and, let's say, heightened attention toward cybersecurity?
Yeah, so it's a little bit like having the attention to cybersecurity is coming more and more. Also because of the current developments that more and more is going into digitalization, and there also security is a major influencer on the data and the systems which are involved. So the interest is growing, and also because there is more and more media coverage on that topic.
Mm-hmm. All right. And as you've mentioned already, the cybersecurity landscape is ever-changing and ever-evolving. How do you manage to keep on top of the latest trends and innovations?
Well, we are covering that on conferences, obviously, and then we also have expert groups where we exchange with other companies and experts in the sector. And there, it's also important to have the exchange and also the view on the trends, what is going on outside of cybersecurity, what are the upcoming trends, which may influence how cybersecurity is evolving in the future.
Mm-hmm. So exchange would be the key word to remember and to note, right, in this development. Great. Thank you, Mr. Bellini. I guess we've covered more than enough concerning the background and some past events. Now, let's discuss and switch our attention to something different, because as someone deeply ingrained in the insurance sector for nearly a decade, you've garnered invaluable insights into the critical importance of data protection and cybersecurity, I'm more than sure. Could you shed light on the general principles or approaches your team employs to navigate the complex landscape of cyber threats, and how do you ensure your team remains at the forefront of defensive measures in the broader cybersecurity landscape?
Well, I think awareness is key here, as is ever-evolving space, and you need to be aware of what's going on and how to act on attacks, and what you need to be prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Are there any strategies, probably without revealing any sensitive details, that you adapt to stay ahead of any emerging risks?
Yes, sure. There we for example, we attack ourselves, or we let us attack. We use techniques called red teaming or purple teaming methods, which allows us to constantly improve and recognize where we may have potential for improvement in the detection of attacks, but also on the side of how can we efficiently react on attacks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, these strategies will cover a bit more today for sure. That sounds interesting. Let's touch another point concerning Switzerland's reputation for strict data protection regulations and adherence to privacy laws. How does these regulatory frameworks impact your approach to cybersecurity within Baloise?
So the stricter privacy laws helps us in the cybersecurity space, because there is not much regulation about cybersecurity in Switzerland. There are some some laws around for critical infrastructure, and then there is some guidance and regulations from FINMA, for example. But the privacy law strengthened the requirements for cybersecurity or information security. So this was also helpful for us to get more attention on the topic, not only from a security perspective, but also from a legislation perspective, in this case from data privacy.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Mr. Bellini. That's more than clear, and I believe we've delved enough into the unique challenges of the insurance sector so far. Let's broaden our scope a bit. During your extensive tenure, you've encountered a myriad of cyber threats, I believe. And in your opinion, what poses the greatest danger to large corporations today? Their sophistications of technical vulnerabilities, or still the human factor, such as susceptibility to phishing emails?
I think the biggest threat here is, or the biggest factor here is still the human factor. As from technical vulnerabilities and risks can be clearly detailed and mitigated and being understood, whereas the human factor is more hard to predict how they behave. Depending on how was your day, are you stressed or not, are you in a hurry? That may also influence how you behave in certain circumstances, which may affect the outcome of a cyber attack.
Right, so human is the creator and destroyer for everything, right? In the cybersecurity as well. And speaking a bit more of human error, what do you see as the biggest challenge in bridging the gap between cybersecurity professionals and other departments within an organization? And how can companies overcome the challenge to ensure this holistic cybersecurity measures?
Well, here awareness is the key to this. Everyone must have a basic understanding on what the risks are and how they should behave in certain situations. Everyone needs to be aware of the dangers in the cyberspace and how they can minimize the risk of being exploited, or how to behave correctly in that area. And it's similar to the real world. You don't just walk across the road without paying attention to the traffic. The same applies to the cyber world. Before I click on a link, I should consider whether this email makes sense in the current context. So, for example, if I get an invoice which is normally intended for my private space, for example, a Swisscom invoice for my private number, I wouldn't expect that to be delivered to my company account. So, and this is something like situational awareness is really important in that context.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bellini. And let's a bit address the technical vulnerabilities, though they are not that impactful, like zero-day exploits. How do you ensure that the organization is fortified against these threats?
Well, for that, we are pursuing a multi-layered approach, meaning we have both technical and organizational measures implemented to prevent attacks as far as possible, or to minimize their extent if they were successful. That is also starting with awareness measures through capabilities for detection irregularities to containment and recovery after a successful attack.
Great, a few strategies. Thank you a lot, Mr. Bellini. Now we've discussed the overarching threats. Let's zoom in on specific challenges brought in by ransomware and remote cyber threats. As an informational security manager, what would be your first steps in responding to such threats, and how different would they be from the technical vulnerabilities we've just discussed? Would they be different?
Yeah. So preparation is key here. You should always be prepared for such common scenarios which are widely around, and you should, in order to recognize them early and have a plan to who has what to do in such attack scenarios. In the case of ransomware, for example, being sure that you have backups and that they are protected from the ransomware attack, and having the ability to isolate, for example, infected devices as quickly as possible.
Would they be the key elements of this effective incident response plan for a ransomware attack?
Yes, for example, yeah. And they should also be trained regularly to enhance the capabilities and also to identify any gaps you may have missed.
And what about collaboration between departments? Can they aid in preventing the crisis?
Collaboration is also key here, because it is not only from a technical or a security perspective, which is important, but also, for example, you need people from the legal department or from communications and from IT, which need to collaborate and do need to understand what the others are doing and what information do we need. For example, communication to the public or to authorities, identifying if we have any legal obligations, for example, reporting to the data protection authority or the regulator, in our case FINMA. These are important steps and need to be also considered during a cyber attack.
Great, thank you a lot, Mr. Bellini. And let's focus on another point that you've already actually mentioned. And you mentioned that you practice red team operations at Baloise as well, right? And do you think that without prior notification, they are a good way to check preparedness and enhance the security awareness of the internal team? How often do you practice them, by the way?
Yeah, I think red teaming is nice, but only partially effective in moving the organization forward. I think purple teaming is the better approach here, because it allows you to learn faster and discover potential for improvement much easier. And yes, at Baloise, we do purple teaming, and we also carried out red teaming in the past. So we started with red teaming and identified there, okay, it brings value, but it brings more value if you combine the attackers and the defenders, that they can exchange more swiftly during a training exercise.
All right, and how often do you recommend such operations, both red and within the organization?
I think that should be done regularly, and of course, it always depends on how mature the incident response team is, because it doesn't make sense having weekly trainings without having the possibility to enhance internal processes or learn from the last exercise.
Great. Thank you a lot, Mr. Bellini. Another point, just to cover, in addition to red team experts, there are also some other skilled professionals in cybersecurity, that's for sure. Do you personally favor engaging a certified pen tester with commercial experience, or do you see more value in collaborating with an experienced bug bounty hunter? And what's actually your take on bug bounty programs?
Well, I think both approaches have their advantages. Personally, I'm a big fan of bug bounty, because the cost-benefit effect is the greatest here, and you can also continuously check your security with minimal effort. And also, most of the bounty hunters which are around have been before regular pen testers, or are still working also for pen testing companies doing traditional pen testing there. So it's not like that bug bounty researchers are people which have no experience, professional experience, how to handle something like an attack to an organization in a good manner.
Great. All right, thank you a lot, Mr. Bellini. Now I've covered quite a lot about cybersecurity, some details, threats and attacks. Let's speak a bit about global society. As we can see a clear trend that it is becoming more digitally interconnected, and it might raise some concerns over total surveillance and information security. Do you believe that cybersecurity will emerge as the primary defense against the global technological panopticon?
Well, as always in history, industrial revolutions and enhancement have their advantages and disadvantages. I don't think we will see total surveillance, for example. There will be also tendencies to the contrary, be it through technical possibilities or the restrictions imposed, for example, by data protection legislation in the past. Each individual should act consciously, just as in the real world. We should think about how we act and where. And if you get something for free from a company, for example, in the virtual world, you naturally should have to think about what advantage they take over for that free service they offer. Because companies tend to, or they need to, and it's obvious, they need to make money. And if they don't charge you for a service, they have other means of getting advantages.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you mentioned that that's also individuals' responsibility, right? Could you give some personal, let's say, detailed recommendations on actions that individuals can take today to be less susceptible to all the intrusions?
Yeah, I think it's like in the real world. You should be aware of what you're doing, not only in the real world, but also in the cyber realm, because it's all more or less the same. You have to be conscious and think about what the person on the other side may want from you, which is not always beneficial for you, but also beneficial for them. So it may be that you should think about what would the situation be in the real world and how would you behave there.
Mm-hmm. So some parallelism exists there, right? Great. Thank you, Mr. Bellini. Now, let's consider a bit emerging technologies. You already talked a bit at the very beginning about AI technologies. What is your perspective on the threats versus opportunities posed by it?
As with all new trends, you have to be aware of the risks and the opportunities. From a cyber security perspective, there's a huge potential for both sides that can and will be exploited. So it's always a challenge there to use, for example, AI technologies to automatically counter attacks. But there will be also the other side, which uses AI technology to enhance their attack possibilities and automate them and make them even better to circumvent technical restrictions on the defender side. So I think, yeah, both need to be aware or will be aware. So you need steadily evolve and go with new trends and technologies to be on the safe side to counter attacks in the future too. Yeah.
And what about blockchain technology? Do you envision it as, again, as the AI enhancing cybersecurity measures and safeguarding sensitive data?
Well, in my opinion, blockchain is not so important for the cybersecurity sector as defense technology. However, when it comes to securing sensitive information, for example, there are definitely use cases which make sense to use blockchain technology to secure data or transactions, for example.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Mr. Bellini. I guess we've covered pretty a lot about the past, present situation. Now let's focus a bit on the future. As we can see, technology is advancing more rapidly today than ever before. Where do you see the future of information security heading in the next, let's say, 5-10 years within the industry?
I think cybersecurity will still be around in 5 to 10 years. as it was in the past, and it will continue to change and adapt to the technological conditions which are around. So if there are coming new technologies, you need to adapt your processes, procedures, and how you behave in cybersecurity and how you work in that field. In the past, it was more around like you have a castle with which was your network, which was secured. Now there are more and more cloud services, so you go away from that castle view where you secure your perimeter more into the direction that you secure your data and your identities. So, and that will be the case in the next 5 to 10 years as well. If the technology emerges, there are emerging trends in cybersecurity as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, taking this, your vision of future into account, could you share, let's say, main piece of advice for those young and passionate enthusiasts who are just starting their cybersecurity career journey? What should they focus on given this rapid advancements in technology and AI?
You should not focus too much on one area because of the evolving trends here. So it's always interesting having a view on what's going on, for example, in AI or blockchain or quantum computing, but also trying to understand what are the connections to other areas and how they influence other areas. In any case, it is always helpful to have a certain basic understanding of the technology, how they work, and how they are. It is the new technological trend is different from an older one, and what are the similarities and the differences.
Well, thank you. I guess this piece of advice could be shared by anybody, even outside the cybersecurity. Keep on training and keep on developing, right? Thank you, Mr. Bellini. Thank you a lot. But before we conclude, I'd like to ask you this final question. Do you think social media is good or evil?
I think we discussed something similar before. It is not something social media is good or evil. It can be used for both. So social media can be used for good and for evil. So, for example, for fake news, and but it can also be used for sharing information or wider space or making it, people aware of circumstances which were not used or known before because of restrictions or limitations. So I wouldn't say something is good or evil. It can be used for both.
Mm-hmm. Everybody decides for themselves, right? Great, Mr. Bellini. It was truly a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for this profoundly insightful conversation, and I'm sure our viewers will have a lot to think about. And as you continue to champion the world of cybersecurity, may your insights resonate far and wide. We wish you all the best and a continued success in all your endeavors.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for the first episode of the V-Spot Perspectives. Marcello Bellini was today with us, an information security manager at Baloise, Switzerland, shedding light on the world of digital security. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive and became one step closer towards your digital transcendence. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on future episodes, and be sure to follow us on social media for more of exclusive content. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay secure and curious.